Today I've got a quick tip, tech tip. We're gonna go with tech tip. It's not that quick. Tech tip. Yeah, tech tip. We're going with tech tip. Diagnosing a battery draw issue. You get a customer or your own car or whatever. Battery drains down overnight within a couple hours, maybe a couple days, something like that. And you need to figure out what the issue is. I'm gonna show you the simplest and quickest way to diagnose this. Now don't get me wrong, there's no quick way to diagnose a battery draw issue. It's never quick, it's always a pain, and it's time consuming. But I'm gonna show you a quick, easy way to do it that doesn't require really any special tools. In fact, everything that you need for special tools, I have sitting right here. So you're gonna need just an amp clamp, or not an amp clamp, a multimeter or amp meter, 3 jumper cables, and some alligator clips or some variation of this. And I'm going to use this in place of an amp clamp. I've used amp clamps quite a bit in the past. If you're a tech, you probably have amp clamps and probably thinking, why don't you just use an amp clamp? They're not as accurate, and I've had quite a few amp clamps screw me over using multiple ones and some pretty expensive ones. So I don't use them anymore. I just use a multimeter. It's easier and it's never failed me. So first thing you need to do is charge the battery, and it's got to be fully charged battery, and a good fully charged battery. Don't ever diagnose anything electrical system related without a good battery. You can run yourself into a lot of problems. So I need to shut this off and take this off real quick. All right, then we grab our meter, and we're gonna grab 2 of the jumper wires. That. Okay, now the first thing you need to know is on your meter you need to use the amp setting, so make sure you got the jumper wires plugged in right. Most meters, if you turn them in wrong, they will beep like that. So if I have it set up for voltage and I set it to read amperage, no, okay, it doesn't. So if you set them up in wrong, a lot of them will beep. We're gonna set this one to read amperage, although I'm gonna leave it off for right now. Then we need these. We'll just bring them all over. I'm gonna start off with 2. Alrighty. Now, what you need to do, I've already loosened this battery cable. So you need to take the negative battery cable off. Always use the negative, not the positive. Wiggle that free and kind of set it aside. Then you're going to take one of your leads. You're going to put the alligator clip on the end of it like that, and you're going to clip it right to the battery post. Have this on. Then you're going to take your other lead right from your meter. Put the alligator, that is way too hard to do one-handed. That on, and you're gonna grab the negative battery cable or terminal. It'll spark, and you'll notice some readings here. It's reading negative because I have these backwards. If you want it to read positive, just because it's a little bit easier to read, you can switch them. So we'll just switch them around, just like that. And now you notice that it started out at about 0.9 amps or 900 milliamps. So you watch it. As I first connect it, you'll see it spike. It actually spiked over 1 amp right there. And then it drops down quite quickly, and it'll slowly drop down over time. And what you're looking for is eventually this will drop down. It should be 0.050 or less. That's kind of the industry standard, is 50 milliamps or 0.05 amps. So I have this set to just read amps, so it should be 0.05 amps eventually. Now there's an important thing here, and that is that modern vehicles are filled with control modules, and control modules take some time to shut down. So when you disconnect the battery and then hook up your jumper wires with your meter, you are essentially turning on all of the control modules in the vehicle. Now this one is a 2003, there's not a whole lot of modules in it. It'll shut down relatively quickly. But with most cars, to play it safe, you need to wait about a half an hour. It's generally quicker than that, but if you wait about 30 minutes, you're pretty much guaranteed to have all of the control modules go to sleep in the car after disconnecting it. The problem is most multimeters, this Fluke included, will automatically shut off after so many minutes of not doing anything, of just sitting there. So that is where this extra jumper wire comes in, because what you need to do is take this extra jumper wire and just add it into the circuit here. You're gonna clamp it right to the negative terminal and right to the negative post of the battery, and you're just going to put it on like that. And you'll notice when I did that this dropped significantly. So if I take it back off, it's about 80 milliamps or so. And I put it back on and it reads that. That's because it has an extra path to go. Now what this does is if the meter goes to sleep, which eventually it will, this will keep the circuit from breaking. If you don't put this in and the meter goes to sleep, you'll have to turn the meter back on, which will reconnect the circuit, and then you have to wait another 30 minutes for everything to go back to sleep. So I'm gonna leave this thing sit for a while. I'm not gonna leave it sit for 30 minutes because I know this car won't take 30 minutes to shut everything down, but I'm gonna leave it sit for a little while and we're gonna see what the amperage drops to. And I don't expect it to actually drop to less than 50 milliamps on this one, because I think there is something wrong with this particular car. It's been sitting all winter and the battery doesn't want to stay charged, so I'm pretty sure there's something wrong with it. But I'm gonna let it sit for a little bit and then I'll come back and we'll see what it looks like. So there's one thing that I did forget to do. I just remembered right as I was about to shut the camera off. Before you ever hook any of this up, before you get to this point, after you've got the battery fully charged, you need to go around and open all of the doors. This car happened to be right up against that wall, so I can't open that door. But what you need to do is open the doors. And so this one, you need to deactivate the switch. So some cars will have a switch like this one has right here. So if you push in on this switch, the vehicle then thinks that the door is shut. So if I let go of the switch, you can see the dome light comes on and actually the window rolls down a little bit, and then I push the switch in, the window rolls up and the dome light goes out. So what you need to do is you need to make the car think the doors are closed even though all of them are open. In this case, I think I can just loosen this screw and the car will think this door is closed. Now the point of doing that is so that once the system has sat for that 30 minutes and everything's gone to sleep, you don't open the door to try to access something inside and re-wake everything up. So you do this so that you can access components inside, interior fuse boxes, things like that. You want to open all the doors, the trunk or hatch on the car, all that kind of stuff. You want to open all of that stuff. This one happens if the switch is not on the exterior of the door like this one is, then use a screwdriver. You're going to use the screwdriver to push in right here and close this latch. Once that latch is closed, it will think that the door is closed. The switch is actually built into the latch in that. So I'm going to go get some tape. I'm going to tape that closed so that the car thinks that the door is closed, and then I can keep going from there. Another little tip here is not to leave the key in the ignition. A lot of cars, if you leave the key sitting in the ignition like that, these systems will not shut down. The car kind of assumes that you're getting ready to start the vehicle, so it won't shut everything down. So take the key out of the ignition. If you have a push button start with a key fob, take the key out of the car and walk it a few feet away from the car and just leave it sit on your toolbox or something like that, so that the system does not think you're about to enter the vehicle or try to start the vehicle. All right, so this car has now been sitting for a little while, probably 20 or 30 minutes or so. And in my case, the meter hasn't shut off yet, and that is simply because I've been hitting this button. So if you keep hitting a button on your meter, it'll keep it turned on. And you'll notice that on the screen, it says, it reads about 30 milliamps, which would be normal, okay? But I haven't removed this jumper wire yet, so we're just gonna unhook one end of this jumper wire and set it aside, and you'll see it immediately shot up to about 80 milliamps, which is a little bit higher than it should be. So I said before, the spec for these, just a good rule of thumb is about 50 milliamps, so 0.050 amps or 50 milliamps. So there's something, very likely something draining this battery down very slowly. An 80 milliamp draw is not much. That won't kill this battery overnight. That'll kill this battery over the course of maybe 3-4 nights, something like that, maybe a little bit less. Now, the one thing I did not mention is that sometimes you get things that turn on intermittently over the course of a night or a couple or the day or whatever within the car. Maybe it's a module that turns on every so often. Those are really, really challenging ones to find. If you go to check your draw after it's been sitting for the 30 minutes and you look at it and it reads 50 milliamps or less, realistically, just about every car out there is going to read less than 50 milliamps. I typically see anywhere from 15 to 30 milliamps is a little more normal. The first thing you're gonna do is just look over the car. You'll notice I shut my door again, even though I said I was gonna tape it. I couldn't find my tape and I didn't want to strip out that screw, so I just left it. In this case, I don't think there's anything inside the car that's actually drawing this battery down, but I'll get to that in a minute. So that's why I left this. So the first thing you want to do really is look over the car. Now, you'll have the doors open and everything, so it'll be easier to see. But if you look through the car, just look for anything. Look at the things like the dome lights. Are they turned on? Or is there anything on the dash that maybe is turned on? Is there a trunk light or something that's still turned on? Something like that. The next thing you want to look at is, does this vehicle, does it have anything aftermarket? Because typically if you have a battery draw, aftermarket components are going to be the cause of that draw. In this case, I do have an aftermarket stereo in there. You probably can't see it. The lighting sucks, so you can't see it very well, but I do have an aftermarket stereo in there. Like I said, I don't think anything inside this car is actually causing this problem. It's possible, it's very possible something internally in the car is causing the problem, but not likely. Aftermarket radios are going to be the common one that you can see visibly, but they're not the most common cause of a battery draw. In fact, it's kind of rare. I've really only had maybe 1 or 2 radios actually cause the battery to draw down like this. What I usually find is somebody has like an aftermarket security system that's tucked up under the dash, or a remote start, maybe just an aftermarket power lock key fob type thing system under there, and that causes battery draws. Best thing to do is just to stick your head up under the dash and see if there's anything aftermarket stuffed up under there. If there is, unplug it and see what the battery draw is. That's the first thing I always do. The next thing I would do is pull the fuse for the radio, whether it's aftermarket or factory OEM. The radio is pretty common cause of battery draws for a lot of people. I personally haven't had too many. I've only had a couple, but it does cause it, and it's an easy thing to get to. So just pull the fuse. If the battery draw goes away, great. If it doesn't, put the fuse back in, forget about it. The next most common thing I've found, and this might just be the area I work in, or maybe the cars that I work on, but cars that have rear wipers. This one is supposed to have a rear wiper, but it doesn't. It's been removed. The rear wiper motors, I've had quite a few of them, especially on Ford Explorers, that cause battery draws. The motor will just kind of be on all the time, even though it doesn't work and it's not moving. So that's a possibility. I mentioned intermittent things. So if you pull this off and you have, like, let's say I disconnected the jumper wire, so just pretend this isn't connected, and I was reading 25, 26 milliamps like that. That would be perfectly acceptable, and I just walk away from the car. If you do that and you have an acceptable one, but you still have a battery drain issue, double check your battery for one thing. You could have the battery just draining itself down. The other thing is you could have an intermittent issue where the battery's drawing down overnight and you've got something in the car that intermittently turns on. This could be a module, this could be any electrical component in this car, just randomly turns on at random intervals throughout the day or throughout the night. To find that, that's a very difficult one to find. What you need to do is go to your meter, and most meters will have this little button here is a min-max button. So you press that, and what that does is it's now going to record the variations. Every time the numbers change, it's going to record those, and you can hit it and you can see, okay, the maximum that it's read is 30 milliamps and the minimum it's read is 26 milliamps. and then it gives you an average. So it'll continually record that. It will, this meter at least, most meters will do this, but this meter, this Fluke, beeps every time that changes. So if I remove this jumper cable, you'll hear the bunch of beeps as it changes, and then I can go back and I can hit the min-max button and see how high it got to. Keep in mind, if you're doing this, you're gonna have to continually be hitting buttons on the meter to keep it from shutting off. Now what this allows me to see if there is a pulse in the system. So if something intermittently turns itself on every 15 or 30 minutes or something like that, something turns on and stays on for a few seconds. I've seen this happen quite a few times, and I've seen it happen where it can cause up to, say, a 5 amp draw for just a few seconds. But a few seconds every 30 minutes, but a 5 amp or even a 1 amp draw for a few seconds every, say, 30 minutes throughout the course of a day or a night or a couple nights will drain the battery pretty easily. The problem with that is it's very hard to track down. So if you've removed it and you have an issue like I do here, where I do have an excessive draw, the next thing to do is to go to your fuse boxes. If there's nothing obvious, there's no lights turned on, anything like that. So now I reached under and I've got my dome light turned on there. I have about 0.6 of an amp, so I've just over half an amp of draw. That'll kill a battery quite quickly. So the next thing to do, if you have this excessive draw, if you have a nice steady excessive draw, that's when it's the easiest, because you don't have to sit and wait for an intermittent thing to happen. If you have an intermittent draw, let it sit and try and time it. See if you can time how often it happens. Typically, they're not random. Typically, when it does that, it'll be at a certain amount of time every single time. It'll happen every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, something like that. If you can time it and figure out on average how long it takes, it's a little bit easier to track down. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go to fuse boxes, assuming you've already unplugged anything aftermarket. You're gonna go to the fuse boxes and you're gonna pull fuses. You're gonna pull them one at a time, checking the draw each and every time. If after a fuse the draw drops back into normal levels, then you need to figure out what is powered by that fuse, what's on that circuit, using a wiring diagram or an information source, whatever. You need to figure out what's powered by that fuse, and then go to those components and unplug those components one at a time with the fuse put back in. Now, before you start pulling fuses, it's a good idea to maybe take your phone and take a picture of the fuse block so you know what the fuses look like and that they go back in the correct spot. When you pull fuses, I like to not put the fuses back in until I've found the fuse that's causing the draw. The reason for that is pulling the fuses and putting them right back in can wake computers back up, and then you have to sit and wait for that computer to shut back down before you can continue your diagnosis, which can cause you a lot of extra time. So it's best to just pull them all out. I take a picture of the fuse box with my phone, so I put them all back in the correct spot, and I double check it with the fuse diagram as well. Sometimes fuses aren't in the right spots. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that you should always start your diagnosis with a fully charged and good battery. In fact, you saw me disconnect the battery charger from this battery. I'm not going to dig any deeper into this battery draw right now because I'm pretty confident that the battery is junk. If you have a bad battery, it can cause it to appear like there's a bigger draw than what there really is on the system. This battery has been sitting on a charger for the last like 3 days, and it's never actually fully charged. The charger, I set it on a 40 amp charge. I left it there for a couple hours, and then I put it on a maintainer, and it never fully charged the battery. This one shuts off and tells me when it's fully charged, and it's never fully charged the battery. So over like the last 3 days. So I'm pretty sure that this battery is junk, so I'm not going to continue any further with this. But if I was, pull the fuses one at a time, find the component that's bad, unplug that component, recheck the system, it'll probably be fine. That's how you're going to go about it. I'm pretty confident my battery's dead, so I'm not going to bother with that. I probably recheck it after I test the after I replace the battery. I don't have a battery tester here in my house. I have one at the shop. I don't have one here at home, so I'm not even gonna bother to test it. The battery's like 6 or 7 years old, something like that. So I'm just gonna replace it and we'll go from there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this helped you figure out how to diagnose this kind of issue. The battery draw issues are time consuming. They can be real intimidating, and they can be quite difficult to find sometimes. But you take these nice easy steps. Like I said, I like to use the multimeter as opposed to an amp clamp. If you don't know what an amp clamp is, it's a clamp that clamps right around your battery cable like that, and then reads the amperage that goes through the cable. Like I said earlier, I like to use the multimeter because I've had a lot of issues with the amp clamps not reading correctly, and ended up searching for draws that weren't actually there, costing me a bunch of time. Again, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope this helped you out. Hope you learned something from this. Hopefully, if you have this issue, if you had a battery draw issue, you can figure it out. This house should help you find your way through that problem. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching.